If your Azure Application Gateway is routing traffic to dead backends right now, you wouldn't even know it, and that's exactly what's happening to about 70% of the multi-tier apps I audit. The default health probes are basically useless for anything beyond a simple website.
Wait, 70%? That's terrifying. I just assumed Azure was smart enough to figure out if my backends were healthy.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Network Ninja Cloudcast. I'm your host, and today we're diving deep into something that will save you from those mysterious 500 errors your users keep complaining about.
Hey everyone. Yeah, I've definitely been on the receiving end of those complaints, so I'm really curious about this one.
So here's the thing. When you set up an application gateway and don't configure custom health probes, Azure creates default probes that just check if port 80 or 443 responds. That's it. It doesn't care if your API is returning errors, if your database connection is broken, or if your app is stuck in some weird state.
So it's like checking if someone's house has a front door, but not checking if anyone's actually home or if the house is on fire inside?
Exactly right, and that analogy holds up technically. The default probe sends a request to the root path, expects any HTTP response, and calls it healthy. Your app could be returning 500 errors all day, and the gateway keeps sending traffic because, hey, it got a response.
Okay, so how do I actually configure a custom health probe that's smarter than that?
In the Azure portal, you go to your application gateway, then Health Probes under Settings, and click Add. Here's where it gets interesting. You specify a custom path like /health or /API/health. Your backend needs to actually implement this endpoint with real logic.
What kind of logic should that health endpoint have? Just return 200, okay?
No, and this is the critical part. For a multi-tier application, your health endpoint should verify all downstream dependencies. If you have a web tier talking to an API tier talking to a database, your web tier health check should call the API tier health check, which should verify database connectivity. Chain them together.
So if the database goes down, the API health check fails, which makes the web tier health check fail, which tells Application Gateway to stop routing there.
Exactly. Now let me give you the specific configuration. Set your probe interval to 30 seconds. That's the default and it's reasonable. Set the unhealthy threshold to 3, meaning 3 consecutive failures before marking unhealthy. Set the timeout to 30 seconds. And critically, set the HTTP response status code match to 200 through 299 only.
Why specifically 200 through 299? What if my health endpoint returns a 302 redirect?
Great catch. A redirect means your health endpoint isn't actually responding. Something else is intercepting it. Maybe authentication middleware, maybe a misconfigured route. You want explicit success codes only. In the portal, you enter this as 200-299 in the match conditions.
What about the probe path itself? Does it matter if I use HTTP or HTTPS for the probe?
It absolutely matters. The probe protocol should match your backend HTTP settings. If your backend pool is configured for HTTPS on port 443, your probe must use HTTPS. Here's a mistake I see constantly. People configure HTTPS backends but leave the probe on HTTP, and it fails silently because the backend isn't listening on port 80.
Oh, that would be so confusing to debug. The gateway thinks everything is unhealthy, but the app works fine when you hit it directly.
Exactly. And here's another gotcha specific to multi-tier apps. If you're using path-based routing, like /API goes to one backend pool and /web goes to another, you need separate health probes for each backend pool. One probe cannot serve multiple pools with different health requirements.
So I might have 3 different health probes for 3 different tiers, each checking their specific dependencies?
Right. Your API backend probe might check /API/health, which verifies database and cache connectivity. Your web backend probe checks /health, which verifies the API is reachable. Each probe is associated with its specific HTTP setting and backend pool.
What's the biggest mistake you see people make with this setup?
2 things. First, they create a health endpoint that just returns 200 OK without checking anything. Completely pointless. Second, they set the unhealthy threshold to 1, which causes flapping. One slow response and suddenly the backend is marked unhealthy. Traffic shifts, then it recovers. Traffic shifts back. Set it to 3 minimum.
Let me make sure I've got this. Custom health probes need a real endpoint that checks dependencies. The protocol must match the backend settings. Each backend pool needs its own probe, and don't set the threshold too low.
Perfect summary. One pro tip: add a response body match condition. Your health endpoint can return a JSON body with status details, and you configure the probe to look for a specific string like healthy:"true." This catches cases where your app returns 200 but the body indicates a problem.
That's really clever. So even if the HTTP status looks fine, you're validating the actual content.
Exactly. Go into your Azure portal today, check your application gateway health probes, and I guarantee you'll find at least one that's using defaults. Fix it before your users find the problem for you.
This is super practical. I'm definitely checking my probes right after this.
That's it for today's episode. If you found this helpful, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel.
And share this with anyone running multi-tier apps on Azure. They probably need to hear this.
Thanks for watching the Network Ninja Cloudcast. See you in the next one.